Who wants a pot of coffee? I just made coffee. You want a cup of coffee? Sure, there you go. Who wants coffee? Anybody else want coffee? Who wants coffee?
And now it's time for the man with the caffeine, the new tropics for the brain. It's Coffee with Mike. Hang in, hang tight, grab your cup, and let's get this thing started.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Java Chat. And this one I've like been looking forward to because I didn't. Let's just say the stammering should tell you exactly how excited I am to interview this person, because it's pretty freaking amazing who this is and what he's done, and the fact that he's an entrepreneur, which is also awesome, and understands startups and understand he's been down the run. Let's put it this way: he's run the full rail and did it both on the pump cart and then on a train. Is that fair to say? Is that pretty fair?
Yeah, if you say so.
Because what it became, anyway, you guys will hear this. His name's Nicholas Hinrichsen, and he founded a company called Calypso after graduating from Stanford Business College. And then he went through the Y-Combinator, which is, some others that have gone in like Airbnb, DoorDash, Stripe, those guys. He raised a total of $10 million in venture funding by 2015, and then sold the business off to Carvana. You guys know who Carvana is, right? I'm sure you do. It's the guys with the automated, the vending machine, the car vending machine in Arizona. I thought that was the most ingenious thing I'd ever seen. Yeah. The coins are a little large, but that's beside the point. And then they joined into the pre-IPO, they went public, and so on and so forth. And that's what we're here to talk about, is that whole journey. So thank you, Nicholas, for coming and hanging out on Java Chat and coming to share your story, man.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, this has been I've been waiting for this one. I think we asked you to come on like somewhere around last month, just a little bit, and give us a little idea of your background, dude. I mean, I get it. You graduated from Stanford Business College. That's cool. But the entrepreneur part, I mean, how did you come up with Calypso? What was the motivation behind that? And, go through that run.
Sure. Why don't I take a step even further back, tell you where I'm originally from, what motivated me to go to college, to Stanford.
Do it.
The entrepreneurial journey. So I'm from Germany originally. I'm born and raised in Germany.
Deutschland. I'm half German. That's why I'm doing that. Sorry.
But that's the version we don't sing anymore.
I know. I always do that for fun. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Don't do that in Germany. So I was born and raised in Munich. That's where the Oktoberfest is from.
München.
Exactly.
My mom is from Leipheim.
Oh, no way.
Yes way. My mother is originally from Leipheim.
Oh,
You'll have to talk to her one of these days. She still speaks their German, so you guys would get along.
That's pretty funny.
Anyway, so you moved over from Germany.
I moved over in 2011, wanted to go to a business school, amongst others, to get into tech.
Sure.
Because if you can't just move to San Francisco and think you know everyone and understand it. Like I needed to figure out a way for me to get into the community.
Right.
Was hoping Stanford could be that way. I had no idea how incredible it worked out on that front. And so I met a bunch of friends, really impressive people, including one of my friends' classmates at No, co-founder, Chris, who was a huge car enthusiast. And
Nice.
So while at business school, he was working on a car. He had like 4 different all-project cars. His first car was a DeLorean, the one from back.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, bought it on Craigslist with his dad, and it was wrecked, and they put it together, and then it ended up driving.
Really? They were actually able to get it functional again?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Apparently, it's not a very fast car.
No.
Apparently, it barely makes it fast enough to time travel, but barely. And then towards the end of business school, all of a sudden, while Chris and I were thinking about starting a business in the car space, all our classmates asked us the question, hey, how do I sell my used car? I need to leave the area, get rid of the car. And we started giving advice, but then and this is typically MBA student, can you just sell it for me?
Yeah.
And like, jokingly, so well, if you pay me for it, they're like, sure, I'll pay you for it. I'm like, oh, that's weird. Do you offer somebody to someone and he then volunteers to pay?
Yeah.
And since we wanted to do something in the startup space, and we had just taken a lot of classes around, the most important thing about a startup is to find value, something valuable, and then figure out how to wrap a business around it.
Mm-hmm.
We thought, oh, wow, clearly there's value we can provide. And Chris had sold a bunch of cars before, so he felt really comfortable doing it. So he taught me. We were selling our classmates' used cars. We detailed them, took photos, put them on Craigslist, met with test drivers. And so the more cars we sold, the more people reached out to us.
Oh yeah.
So really positive sign that we'd found something that people really wanted. The problem was that business doesn't scale very well. Like you end up being a car dealer. And what we said, well, the most painful part really is the test drive.
Yeah. That's always the biggest
Like,
problem. Yeah.
Yeah, because people either don't show up or show up hours late. Some just want to kick the tires.
Mm-hmm.
And so we said, well, let's see if we can figure out a clever way to remove ourselves from that process. And so we created this box, which allowed us to create a Zipcar-like experience where you'd swipe your ID, box opens, you can grab the key, test drive the car by yourself. The car is tracked on GPS, so we'd always know where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then if the buyer wants to keep the car, it would just go to the bank, pay for it. We did all the processing of the title, and there we go. And so that started working really well. And then a bunch of our professors and lecturers who we'd asked for advice followed us and kept listening to us and got really excited about what we were doing. And so we ended up raising our seed capital round from basically people associated to Stanford.
Wow.
And that was before we went through YCombinator. YCombinator is, as you said, a startup accelerator program where usually startups go to then raise money.
Yeah,
raised money before and then grew the business at YCombinator.
So did you guys didn't have, well, you did it inside the pre-funding, so you didn't have to do, what did you guys do later, a 316 or Reg D, or what did you guys do?
No, so we started out with, back then, it's changed a little bit, but back then the way you would raise money as a little startup is through convertible notes.
Right.
Because you don't need any lawyers, you just, that's a standard paperwork.
Sure.
And then the second round of funding after YC was through what's called a SAFE.
Okay.
Similar concept. It's a simple agreement for future equity. So
yeah,
you agree on a valuation, you get the money, and it converts into real equity later. And the reason you do that is so you don't have to spend fortunes on lawyers and put a real round together. And then in 2015, we raised a big institutional round of $8 million, bringing up the capital to all the way to 10 million. And that's when everything converted into real equity.
Sure. How long did that process take?
Well, we went fundraising twice, really. After YC, like you got to do fundraising because most companies go there to fundraise.
Yeah, sure.
And so this business model, this peer-to-peer thing didn't quite work. We weren't very confident that this would be the end state of the business. And when we were pitching it to investors, they realized, this doesn't scale and this is not very, very techie quite yet. And the reason being is you have these two people with different interests. You have the seller who wants more for the car and the buyer who wants to pay less.
Sure.
And so what we ended up doing, we pivoted away from this peer-to-peer model into a model where we would work with institutions, so leasing companies, rental companies, fleets. These institutions have a lot of cars. They can't sell directly to consumers. Instead, we advertise these cars on their behalf, found a buyer, and if and when we found a buyer, we would buy the car, recondition it, deliver it. And so that's the business that started taking off.
That's different. Is that the same as the Carvana model? I think that's slightly different, isn't it?
It is slightly different. I'll tell you why and how these two came together later on. That's the model that took off. And then while the first round of fundraising that was end of 2014 was not very successful because institutions didn't believe this model would scale, neither did we.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, half a year later, we ran into this new model that worked really well. And for the first time in the history of the company, we'd been 2.5 years, 2 years old at that point. For the first time, capital was a constraint because if you take cars in inventory, you actually need to finance them for 2 weeks.
Sure.
And then turn them, and margins were really good. And so at that point, that's a really good time to raise money because you can demonstrate if you had more money, you could do more.
Yeah. It's that holding time you had to cover.
Exactly, amongst others, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that process took 4 weeks. That happened really quickly.
Wow.
And then fast forward, so that business scaled really nicely. We were selling about 150 cars a month soon after.
Jeez.
That sounds like a small number, but it's more than $3.5 million in revenue.
Most used car dealerships are happy if they can push out 40 units a month.
Exactly, yes. And we did it all from a little garage. Like we it's like you want tech to keep things small, and it allows you to do things that you can't do without tech.
Right.
And so then the question was, okay, what do we do now? we think we can scale this from 150 to 1,500 to 10, 15,000? Or is there a better way? You always need to figure out what are your options and
Sure.
what's the most valuable thing to do. In
Sure.
our case, the business became more operational than we wanted to. Like
Uh-huh.
we wanted to move bits and bytes and have servers, and
Yeah.
instead we ended up with a call center and
Wow.
used car factories practically, and people like car mechanics and fixing cars.
Jeez.
Um, and so one thing we had gotten really, really good at is we had this unique problem that we didn't have the cars with us. Like
Uh-huh.
we were advertising thousands of cars every day, but none
Right.
of these cars were with us.
Right.
So in order to describe what trim they have, what packages, options, what equipment was in the car, we needed to find a way how to use technology to describe vehicles.
Sure.
You'd think if you have the VIN of the car, you know everything, but that's not the case.
Really?
Most VINs don't tell you anything. Like they tell you year, make, model,
Yeah.
sometimes trim. But if you have a BMW, you don't know whether it's the 320, 328i, 335.
Really? It doesn't tell you that stuff?
No, it
I
doesn't
didn't know
tell you.
this. I honestly didn't know this. That's
Yeah.
news to me.
If I give you a BMW VIN of a 3 Series, you know it's a 3 Series, but it could be the base model or the one that's $30,000 more expensive that is fully loaded. And so we
Gotcha.
needed to become really good at describing vehicles that we didn't own.
Right.
100% online. And so that's what we use tech for, tons of data stuff, scraping and then normalization. And so we were the first one who had the problem of having to describe vehicles that are not in your possession. And Carvana ran into that problem a little later because they were growing so big that they couldn't rely on people describing these cars. And then when we compared notes, because that's what you do, if your competitors, you're in the same space, it's a huge space, like we never felt like competitors.
Mhm.
We told them, hey, we've built this is working really well for us. We started with the operational piece. Carvana said, well, we got the operational piece. We also got the financing. Like they had the fully fledged experience.
Mhm.
One thing they wanted to invest in was getting better at describing vehicles 100% digital.
Yeah.
We had already figured that out. At least like
The last piece of the puzzle.
beginnings of the last piece of the puzzle.
Nice.
And so then instead of raising more money, we decided to sell what we had built to Carvana and for the whole team to come over and join Carvana. And that's how the deal happened.
And you got, so are you a part of Carvana now, or are you?
Good question. So we stayed for 3 years, which was incredibly fun, obviously, because
I bet.
I always describe it as it's switching lanes. I felt like we were driving a nice car going down the road, but at some point Carvana was just much faster than us, and then we got the chance to just hop on their board, on their train, and then go with them at full speed. And we had really interesting roles at Carvana. We love the founders and executives. We're really good friends, and so that was a really fun experience. But after 3 years, the company had become really big, and Chris and I wanted to start another business. Had a few convictions and insights, and so we left in June of this year to start a new company.
That's a hell of a story. And this happened in the course of how many years?
We ran our company for 4 years, and we stayed with Carvana for 3 years.
So 7 years.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it felt like 7 days.
And then that was going to be the next question. Did it really feel like that? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs, it's go, go, go. And then when they turn around and they look back, it's like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Did
so
that time?
Number one, people always want to build companies overnight and think all the companies going public are these overnight successes.
Yeah,
That's
right.
never true. They're all overnight successes, 10 years in the making.
Yeah.
Building a big company takes at least 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
If you look at all the IPOs now, like these companies, you haven't heard of them, but they're at least 8 years old. And if you ask the management, like, yeah, no, this is not a company that we have a lot of work to do, it's very valuable.
Yeah.
The first 4 years when we were running, the first 2 years of running our company were fun because we kept experimenting. The second 2 years were really hard because we worked so hard. We just wanted to make this business work. And then at Carvana, it became really interesting because we switched from, at least that's true for me, from being like this entrepreneur in charge to becoming an employee. And so that has some benefits. You have a little bit more time.
I was going to say, how did that change? Yeah, I was going to say, how did that change? Because at that point, it's no longer the stress of you producing for the whole company. You're still producing and there's still stress on your shoulders. But I mean, like, your responsibility to the
Yeah,
bottom line has kind of changed.
that's true. The responsibility is the fun part. So not having that feels like a relief for 2 weeks, but then you're like, oh, I really like that.
Yeah.
The big difference in a big company, and this is not unique to Carvana. I think Carvana is really good at that, but other companies feel it too. Like you can only run so fast.
Yep.
Because now you have a big team, you're integrating with a lot of other people. This business is very complex. And so like the progress was a little slower than what I was used in our startup because we were scrappy.
Yep.
And as I said, it happens to every company. And so I just have had more time. Like I was not the gating factor to getting a lot of things done. And so I didn't have to work on weekends, and then I could take off at 6 p.m., which we never did when we ran our own company.
Yep. Yeah.
So that was nice to recharge. A bunch of my friends got married. I traveled a lot. And so now I'm really eager to be back in the weeds and working 16-hour days and being really excited about the small successes.
It's an interesting thing that I learned with most entrepreneurs, especially when they experience what you've experienced, going from being the guy out in the weeds versus the guy who's now a part of the machine. I'm the same way. We find it, for some weird reason, much more fun to be out in the weeds.
Yeah, we like the pain.
We like the, yeah, we're freaking gluttons for punishment. I swear. I mean, it's, you know, people are, you need your sleep. I'm sleeping, I'm dead. You know, eating's a bad habit. You know, that kind of whole thing. And I did this when I was in other businesses as well. When I was an investment manager for an angel investment group out of California, I was always looking to see how much was the dedication for the people that are looking for that funding.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, this is pre POC, proof of concept, excuse me, where people would be like, well, we have this idea, we have this. Okay, cool. How long have you been working on it? Well, we've worked on it for the last few months. Really? How many hours have you put in? Never heard enough. Never heard enough. Because I know the moment I go back to the angels and I go, hey, they've been working on this for 6 months. They put in, you know, 5 or 4 hours a day on it. And they look at me and they go, are you out of your mind?
Then they should have done that in two months.
Yeah, they should have gotten all that shit done in 2 months. What else are they doing? Well, they have jobs. Well, that's their problem. You know, it's interesting. The angel investment world and the VC world, both. It's interesting to what they put value on when it comes to who's driving this whole thing. And I'm sure you guys found that too.
Yeah, what I think startups weren't very well understood for a long time, I think. Like had I told you even 5 or 6 years ago, every startup has a false start. You start with a conviction and then you find out, oh, nobody wants this.
Yeah.
But then people tell you what they want, what they want you to build, and then you build that.
Yeah.
So that happens to every startup. Every startup pivots. Startups don't take 3 years. They take 10 years. You have a distinct phase of what we call finding product market fit. So finding something that people really love.
Yep.
And then only then when you feel like people are pulling it out of your hands and you can't keep up with like all the demand, then you transition into a scaling phase. And what do you use money for, and what's a good and bad use for money? And I think there is much more clarity around it because people have just seen way more startups do good and bad things. And so now I think it's clearer, at least to me.
I'd have to agree with you, because startups in the past would always be like, well, we got this wonderful project, and a million and one stories around it, of course. The difference between somebody coming in with a full laid out plan versus the guy that sits down and goes, hey, if I could do this, would you be interested?
Yeah.
And it hits that nerve in the investor going, holy shit, you can do that? Really? And then there's still that pivot that you mentioned, because even that may not be what the market wants. Might be what the investor's interested in, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's ready for market.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah. So
and then there's also this nuance, something that Chris, my co-founder, and I keep repeating over and over again because we didn't understand the first time. First time founders are obsessed with product.
Yeah.
You're just obsessed with, I have this cool idea, this cool product, people will love it. Second time founders are like, well, I'm just obsessed with distribution, getting in touch with people, getting in front of people.
Yeah.
And then once I have a big audience and a repeatable way to acquire customers, I'll find out what they really want.
It's interesting how the process seems to reverse itself once you're there.
Yeah, you make other mistakes. Just don't make the same mistakes again.
Right. Yeah. Well, and what the thing that I see with a good portion of startups is they have a tendency to be so stuck in what their passion is, they forget that they need to do that.
Well, it's tough because it's emotional. It's your little baby,
Oh, all
and
day. Yeah.
you don't want to admit your baby's a little ugly today, and it requires a little bit of makeup or maybe a whole change. So yeah, I can understand that.
I think there's more than one diaper change that's needed for any baby. So that's just
That
kind of
is
how
true.
yeah.
That is true.
I don't know why we went down that way, but it went that way.
That was your fault. Worst case, we'll
I
blame
own
you.
it. I own it. It's all good. Hey guys, we're going to take a short pause and we're going to come back. We'll talk a little bit more about motivations and who your influencers are. Talk a little bit about where you got your inspirations from. That cool?
Sure. Sounds
Okay,
good.
cool. We'll be back in about 30 seconds, guys. We'll see you in a second. And we're back here at Java Chat, sitting here having a cool chat with Nicholas Hinrichsen, one of the founders of Calypso that eventually merged into Carvana. Hell of a story, dude. I'm curious, who are the major influences? Like when you were back at Stanford, did you have anybody that you kind of looked up to as far as the entrepreneurship side of things, like whether it was a professor or an actual person in startups and stuff? And how did that affect you? I mean, what did that teach you?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's so important, and you only know when you have these people in your life how valuable they are. So Chris and I were selling our classmates' cars,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just didn't know what I was doing with my life. Like neither Chris thought this was going to be a business. We just spent the summer finding value.
Right.
And so I sat down with this gentleman. His name is Andy Ratcliffe. I met him through school. He's a lecturer. He got his MBA at Stanford himself. He started Benchmark Capital, the probably best, if not second best, venture capital fund in the Valley.
I was about to say that name Radcliffe sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was the
You
first
got to
investor
sit
in
down with
Spain.
him?
Yeah, he's a friend. We become
Holy
friends.
crap, dude. That is amazing.
And so he was the first investor in eBay. He started this fund, Benchmark Capital. He left to start Wealthfront. The fund was the first investor in Uber and in Snapchat, so incredibly successful. And so I sat down with him and I'm like, hey, Andy, I need your advice if you don't mind. I don't know what to do with my life. I really wanted to start a company, but I just can't find a good idea. Maybe I should work for a tech company or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then we grabbed a beer, and after an hour, he said, I'm really sorry, I need to leave now. But I think you already made up your mind. I'm like, what do you mean? You should be selling cars. And if you want to make this a company, he has $50,000 to get started.
No way. Really?
Yeah. And I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, there's always a handful of students I want to support. I think you're onto something, not because of the idea, it's just because of your hustle of you've been selling cars. You remind me of other entrepreneurs who I've backed and who were really successful in the past.
Huh.
Then yeah, let me know.
No
And
way. Like just
like
handed you $50K and said, here, just go do this.
Yeah, like virtually, he said.
No,
let
but
me know.
but literally, the man himself said, here's $50K. You already know what you're doing. Just go do that.
Yeah, and so then I called Chris. I'm like, Chris, dude, we have a problem. He's like, what? Andy wants to invest in us. And he's like, seriously? That's cool.
Yeah.
Where's the problem? I'm like, well, the problem is, A, we don't know what we're doing, and B, you're about to start a job in 4 weeks.
Oh.
And he's like, yeah, well, let me call them real quick. So he called this company that he wasn't really excited about, quite frankly, and said, hey, here's this unique opportunity. This is an opportunity that he has to do it now. If he does it later, or if it's being presented later, he'll probably not take it.
Right.
And so we ended up, that kicked off our fundraise, and he's become like this really, really incredible mentor. Every time we don't know, like we are at this cross path and don't know which direction to go, we ask Andy for advice. He's just a text message away. And I just really, really love how he thinks about entrepreneurship. So that's one role model, and I feel really blessed and lucky to have him as a friend.
That is amazing.
And then, but I think like this whole entrepreneurship and wanting to start your own company, I think that comes from somewhere else. My grandfather had his own business.
Nice.
My dad always wanted to be incredibly entrepreneurial. He's a doctor. He's a gynecologist specialized in fertility treatment. Mm-hmm. And he had his own practice, and then started small clinics and joined a private equity fund and acquired more company practices and consolidated the market in Germany. And so I, like from early on, I saw how much more energized he was working on like an entrepreneurial venture versus being an employee. And he was the one, it's funny because it's funny how life goes. Sometimes I always wanted to study engineering, and I said that when I was playing Lego in my like teens,
Yeah.
or even younger, when I was 5, 6, 7.
Uh-huh.
And he said, "Yeah, you'll definitely study engineering, and then at some point you'll get something like an MBA." And so an MBA that's not a thing you do in Germany. Like people don't know what that is. His brother had done it, his cousin had done it, and both felt it was a really good experience. And then we never talked about MBA again until I took my first job, did it for 2 years, and then wanted a break from that job because the company wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
And then I myself said, well, there's this thing called MBA, maybe I should look into that.
Right.
And so I applied, got into Stanford, moved, and the rest is history, obviously. But I think if it hadn't been for my dad, who has this entrepreneurial drive and who somehow mentioned MBA early on and planted a seed without him knowing, I think I would have never chosen such an entrepreneurial path.
Quite possible. Quite possible. Everybody comes from a different background. Sometimes it's the family that does it. Sometimes it's just somebody that's an inspiration. You had two mentors, Pops and Andy. And that whole decision to go into the MBA, what was that experience like? I mean, obviously we're talking about Stanford here. So, I mean, but what was that experience like going through their MBA program?
With the MBA, I think most people don't. Well, I didn't understand what it was. I had a perception, but I was.
Most people have perceptions and have no clue.
So it's not a super academic experience. You can choose it to be.
Yeah.
But I chose to do a lot of like run big risks, take classes in design thinking, and I learned Portuguese. It's funny that you mentioned that earlier.
Awesome.
I did other engineering classes, and then I did a lot of classes around venture capital entrepreneurship, trying to really understand that.
Yeah.
The hard part is getting in. Once you're in, you're surrounded by these incredible people. We don't really have proper grades. Nobody discloses what grades you have at your MBA program. Therefore, all the employers would ask you for it. Therefore, you take risk and take difficult classes instead of taking easy classes.
Sure.
So there's a few things that are really, really cleverly done. And then you just meet a lot of people and make incredible friends. People always say you go to get your MBA because of the network. The network sounds like a very transactional term. These are all your friends.
Yeah.
So when we, for example, were fundraising again 2 months ago, first thing we did, I just pinged all my friends who now work at these investment companies, at these venture capital funds, and told them, hey, we're ready. It's like, perfect. I'll make the introduction to the partner. When is a good time?
Yeah.
And so this is what's probably most valuable, including you make your best friends at business school.
Yeah. It's for any college, USC, Stanford, here at UNLV, the networks of the alumni, it really is a friendship. You're kind of part of a family, essentially, because these are people
true,
you can pick up a phone and call them, even if it's just to say, what's up,
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a degree of comfort that you never have to worry about the defensive mechanisms that come up during cold calls and all that kind of extra stuff when you're talking to venture funds.
Exactly.
I was part of and I still have some shares in it. I was part of a tech startup that was serving the meeting space. And we talked to a couple of funds, and those came as a result of people's friends that they'd worked with before or gone to school with. So completely, absolutely true. It's interesting that the MBA isn't such an academic experience so much as it is a learning experience. And I hadn't actually even thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. You can make it as academic as you want. It just really depends on what you're really after.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's nice that the design is really is in your hands at that point of what you want to get. You're
super flexible. And like the interesting learnings come from doing something that's really cross-functional, where you meet other people from other faculties.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed that part of the experience.
The entrepreneurship program here at UNLV, I've heard numerous times where the students from the Entrepreneur MBA would be working with the computer science and engineering department constantly for new ideas, because it's just like, what if we could do this? I don't know how to build that. Go over to the engineering department, see if they can help.
These guys, they can figure it out.
And they come up with some pretty cool stuff. I mean, one of the ones that I don't know if it'll ever come up, but I thought it was pretty cool, was smell-o-vision.
What is that?
Smell-o-vision is the ability to turn on aromas during a TV show.
Oh, wow.
and it would come out of this little
Do people do
box.
that?
They built a prototype. I don't know if it ever went anywhere. I haven't heard anything since, but they built a prototype, and the idea was that you could get certain scents mixed in from different things. Now, obviously, for a real version of that would have to be like super intricate. But the
Yeah.
idea
Do
was
you remember the
cool.
movie Richie Rich?
Yes,
He has this thing where he can smell things and then buy them or something like
that's
that.
right. That's right. I remember that. That's a different type of smell-o-vision, but yeah, that's the same idea.
Yeah,
I wonder who would invest in something like that. That would be pretty damn awesome.
that would be fun. Yeah,
That smells good. I'd like to order that on Uber Eats, please.
exactly. Yeah.
In the midst of all of the stuff that you guys did, there's always roadblocks.
Yeah.
Every entrepreneur runs into them. You kind of talked about a couple. What are some of the biggest ones you learned lessons from?
Well, when you made the intro, you made me sound like I'm the superhuman. Like I'm definitely not.
But of course you are.
No, every startup is like a bunch of failures in a row until something didn't fail.
Yeah.
There's actually the saying by Phil Knight, the guy who started Nike. He's like,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with failing. You'll fail a lot. Just make sure you don't fail the last time you try. And so I think that's a good analogy for, or metaphor for how startups work. And so in our case, we thought this peer-to-peer model is the way to go. I'll help you, Michael, sell your car to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong, didn't work. We worked on that for a year and a half, busted our butts, weren't going anywhere. Then we changed the model, just admitting that you need to change everything. That means you have a whole team that needs to understand it. The team liked the mission of the first business better, but didn't understand it wasn't a business.
Right.
So that was a failure. Then building out our company that ended up actually scaling quite a bit, but then realizing, oh, it's not the tech company we wanted to build. That felt like a failure. We sold to Carvana. The outcome is incredible, but like we would have much rather acquired Carvana in some way.
Right.
So, which, like, I don't mind any of this. I have zero regrets. I think we learned so much. There was no better outcome we could have produced.
Sure.
And now we're really eager to, like, now we have a little bit on a chip on our shoulder to do it again, but this time, like, be the company that acquires other companies. And so, yeah, we're
so you guys have moved out of being owners and employees. You're now looking at investing. Is that what I'm hearing?
No. So yes and no. We left Carvana. We started our own next company.
Uh-huh.
It's called Clutch. It's a digital platform to refinance auto loans.
Nice.
The domain is withclutch.com. Maybe you can put it in
Well,
the show.
we will. All of that stuff comes in the comments. Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of people who can save a lot of money, don't even know they can. And in parallel, we do some angel investing, small checks to friends who remind us of ourselves.
Sure.
Then when we were like in the weeds, struggling. Yeah. The new business, like, we want that to be really big and have a lot of impact and help a lot of people save a lot of money. And so I think the fact that we were acquired created a little bit of a chip on our shoulder that keeps motivating us to still be really impactful ourselves.
Sure. That's awesome. When you're doing those little things, I get it that you're looking for the people that are motivated like you guys were, but what are the kinds of things that you guys actually look to invest in?
So I think there's two different types of people I invest in. I love South America. So every person who has a good education, understands startups, and goes back to Brazil to start a company, I would just write a small blind check because A, I love the country, B, I know it's a small community and they all know each other. Often they start businesses that worked somewhere else, and Brazil is just a little behind. So these are just really interesting business to invest in. Or in founders who just really embrace getting advice if there is any to give, and who remind us of ourselves, like in the weeds, not trying to tell you the big picture and this huge vision of what you're trying to build, but actually investing in the right discovery process.
Sure.
And so those, without me actively seeking, if people approach me, or if somebody tells me, hey, I know these guys, would you talk to them? And I meet them and I think I understand what they're doing, then I write a check. That's
cool. That's always cool. Hey guys, want to take one more short break? Actually, we're doing good.
Great.
I always look at my clock over there, and it's right here on my freaking screen. We are at about the 40-minute mark. I'm gonna take one more break. and come back and wrap up and ask for a little bit of advice from you
Sure.
for our entrepreneurs and people that are thinking about stuff. So it's 30 seconds and we'll be right back, y'all. All right, guys, back here with Nicholas Hinrichsen, now of Clutch.com, formerly of Carlipso and Carvana. What drives you, dude? I mean, I get the fact we love to be out in the weeds, and that's just kind of how we are. But what motivates you? What really moves you to get moving?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So here's an anecdote that I think explains it really well. When we graduated from business school, we had one lecturer, entrepreneur himself, tell us, hey guys, you need to understand you're in a very, very unique position compared to everyone else. You're leaving Stanford Business School. You could have almost any job you want right now. You'll all make a lot of money. So don't worry about that. Like what you should do now is you should worry about how can you have the biggest impact.
Yeah.
Because even if you start a company and fail, you can always go back to the other job. Like it's not going to run away.
Right.
And so you'd be silly to not explore ways to have disproportionate impact. It'll pay off for you like multifold, but especially the ability to have impact on a lot of people because of your plan B is what you should be striving for. And so that resonated very much with me because it's so true. It's true. Like ultimately you want to ask yourself, what do you want to be remembered for? And I don't want to be remembered for like having worked in a consulting company or in an investment bank all my life, even if you may have impact. Like I want to be remembered for helping Americans save tons of money on their cars. Like that's something where I feel like I left a mark and made a little dent and help people get out of like bad places and bad situations. And so that motivates me. And in the past, money motivated me more than it does now because I'm realizing the money, like if you impact a lot of people, the money will come automatically. The more you impact, the more money you'll get. But it really, the driving force needs to be the impact, not the money, because if you strive for money, you won't necessarily have the impact.
Yeah.
So that's what I learned, and admittedly, it took a little bit of time.
Yeah.
It took me a little bit. It also took me to have a little bit of money to understand. Oh, if I go after the asset, the other thing will. If I go after the impact, the money will come.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I'm in for, and that's what I'm looking forward to, especially with the new business Clutch, because there is the opportunity to help a lot of people. I think it's our opportunity to address income inequality in a very creative way, and so that's what motivates me.
That's sweet. When you're looking at the point of being in a startup or being a startup or thinking about doing a startup or something like that, what's a good piece of advice you think you can give to some people out there that are just, they have it in their mind, they have this wonderful idea and they're thinking about running into this whole thing called the startup?
Yeah.
Well, what would be your best piece of advice for them?
The most important thing is to get it out of your mind and do something. For as long as it's in your mind, two things happen. A, you're not doing anything. B, you're actually talking yourself out of it. You find too many reasons why something wouldn't work. And if you just know for a fact that whatever you start will change based on things you learn, then I think you approach it differently. Then you say, okay, let's get this failure out of the way really quickly so I can discover something that really works. And so my piece of advice would be just get started. Like just do it. Don't find reasons not to. Find reasons to take baby steps. The most important thing is to end up talking to customers, to potential customers, because they'll tell you what they want and they'll tell you why what you have in mind isn't worth pursuing. And then that allows for learning and that allows you to find something that really works.
It's such a resounding theme when I ask that question is take a step.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do something. Don't let it sit proliferating in your head. That whole negative self-talk comes way too easy, especially for entrepreneurs. We're masters at talking ourselves out of shit.
Exactly. Yeah. Been there, done that.
Yeah, I at least twice, right?
Yeah.
I think one of the big safeguards of that is possibly taking a look in that mirror and going, am I doing this to myself? And being honest with it.
That's probably true. Yeah. I would agree.
So you've begun a new business. You're being an angel investor. Obviously, you've reached a level of success that right now you're obviously happy with and looking forward to much more. What would you think is the biggest challenge that you guys are dealing with right now, or you personally?
Let's see. So I feel like lucky that things feel a little easier this time around than last time.
You get it this time, yeah.
the challenge still is, I'm not going to do a good job repeating this quote, but there is this quote saying it's much easier to tell people they have been fooled. No, it's much easier to fool people than to explain to people that they have been fooled.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is basically what we're going on against. People have a car loan, and it was much easier to sell them the first car loan at
Sure.
the dealership
Sure.
than it is to tell them, hey, you've been fooled back then. And sell you a better loan. People always were like, no, I think you're wrong. We're like, no, dude, you don't trust car dealerships, right? Yeah. So why did you trust them with your personal financial products? Like, oh yeah, that's a good question. And so I think creating awareness, which is part of the reason I love talking about the topic, and I'm thankful that you, Michael, and I can have this conversation here.
Absolutely.
People just need to know that you can refinance your auto loan and save thousands of dollars. And we'd love to be there for them when and if the time is right.
I may have a solution for you on that one. We'll talk about that later, because getting information out is always a challenge, especially when it comes to putting out facts. By the way, I've friends that work in the auto industry, and I've asked them about that whole thing, and they're like, you realize that when they finance a car, they make way more money than if they sell it for cash. And I was like, explain. And they did. And I remember my jaw being on the ground for about a minute going, are you effing kidding me?
Yeah, that's what's happening.
But nobody knows. Nobody knows this stuff because of everything that gets wrapped into it. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I think I may have something for you on that. We'll definitely talk about that. So we've already mentioned clutch.com. That's one place they can find you. Where else can people find you?
Probably the easiest way to connect with me is on LinkedIn, and I really enjoy having new connections. So feel free to reach out if you have questions, advice, feedback. Feedback is a gift, so don't hesitate. I'd love for you guys to connect with me. It's just look for Nicholas Hinrichsen on LinkedIn. You'll find me immediately. I'm sure Michael will put the LinkedIn into the show notes too. And then I look forward to connecting.
And I'm not sure if we're connected, but we will be after this. That's for damn sure.
We will be.
Listen, I want to thank you for sharing your story. I'm sure there's much more that you can share. There's more stuff to talk about when it comes to fundraising, posturing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Would love to have you back to talk a little bit more about Clutch too, and how things are going down the road. Yeah. This has been fun, man. I really enjoyed this.
Same here. Thanks for having me. I feel flattered. You take
flattered. I'm the one who's flattered. Goodness gracious. You know, Andy Radcliffe. What the hell? And now I know Nicholas Hinrichsen. What the hell?
But no, we're not yet there. But one day maybe.
Yeah. Well,
I'll remember you.
Yeah, I'm always glad when I can actually say they know me. That's my biggest joy is when somebody can actually go back to that person and go, do you know who Mike Kaliki? Oh yeah, the crazy Hawaiian with the coffee chat. Yeah, I know him. I'm all right with that. So you guys know how we love to end this. It's always the same. We always tell you we love every one of you. We hope the best for every one of you. Stay up, stay safe, stay healthy, and live. From both of us to all of you. Ciao for now.
Ciao for now.
That's it, brother. That's how that works. And we'll
edit that in. This was really fun. I look forward to airing.
I do try to make this as enjoyable as possible, and I try to keep the door open as much as possible. So if you think of something that comes up, and it may be a complete tangent, I don't care. It's a rabbit hole. I'm a rabbit hole runner. Definitely would love to have you back again.
Sure.
We'll connect with you on LinkedIn. I got all your links over here. I want to make sure I have Clutch on there. Yep, it's on there. So we'll get all of this stuff posted, and then we will.
Do you have a headshot? Did I send you a headshot through the form or something like that? If not,
I don't think the form had a headshot. It's probably on podcastguest.com.
Maybe. What I can do is I can send you a quick email headshot and then a bio that you can just copy paste with the links in it. So you don't have, I can do the legwork, you just copy paste.
You typical entrepreneur. You want to do all the work, damn it.
I just want to make it easy for you.
You're supposed to make it easy for me. What the hell?
I'll send you an email within 5 minutes and then you just copy paste and I put the links in there, very subtle, and LinkedIn and website, and that would help us a lot also.
Yeah, and what we do with that is I have 6 interns right now from 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them are from UNLV, one's from the University of Chicago. Interestingly enough, I am signed up as a potential employer with Stanford. I didn't think I was going to get accepted by them. and they picked me up through Handshake. So I don't think I've gotten any applications through them yet, though. Probably because we're just a tiny little boutique agency and we don't have a lot of traction yet. But what I do is I have content producers. They'll take what you give us, they'll rewrite it a little bit, they'll put it over into YouTube as a description with all the links, and then Anchor, same story. And then we send you the 2 links so you can promote it however you want.
Yeah, of course. I'll send it through all of social media multiple times.
Interesting thought, because I've been getting bumped on this here and there, and I actually almost went for Syracuse. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to back up a little bit because I can't find my transcripts. So I'm probably going to have to take a few classes over.
Okay.
Thoughts on pursuing Stanford as the MBA? Would it be something that? And I'm a guy that loves AI tech. Our agency actually does identity resolution. We have a license to an ID graph and all kinds of automation shit. Is it worth it doing right at this point, or what are your thoughts on it? Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
I would, if my kids, I wouldn't push my kids. I don't have any kids, but if I have people at some point, I wouldn't push them to do it. But if they asked me, I would 100% endorse it. If I met my best friends there, I would have not started the first company. If I hadn't started the first one, I wouldn't have sold it. Had I not sold it, I wouldn't have started the next one.
Right. Exactly.
So life changed entirely.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really thankful for it. Yeah, 100%.
Cool beans.
I got a single person who didn't have a good experience.
I have 2 partners now. One is self-taught SEO, knows the shit inside out. The other one's he also works in marketing. He has his own stuff outside, but in the partnership, he's got a whole bunch of new automation tools that are just stupid crazy.
Okay.
No, it's like he's one of 20 guys that has what he has. Our company has the AI license is one of maybe 30 agencies that have it. Nobody really uses it well. Yeah, we use it for paid advertisements, and it actually has behavioral data in secured files, so that when somebody's looking for something, the machines know when to put the right ad in front of that person, so it's not out of place. It's user experience kind of stuff.
Contextual, yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah, it really does a lot of I say damage, because it does a lot of good for dropping cost of acquisition and raising ROI. But anyway, that another time we can talk about that. I will get this out to the group. I usually do my edits Friday. It should be up, I want to say, the week after next.
Oh, amazing. You're quick.
It's usually up by Monday, but we've had so many guests as of late, we're behind. So we're posting one on Monday and Tuesday. We post another one Thursday and Friday. And it goes up on javachatpodcast.com.
Okay.
If you ever want to take a look at that.
No, of course, that's where I did some research.
Wonderful. We haven't done a lot of blogging. As you can see, we don't have any merchandise yet. But, I need a mailing address, please.
I'll add it to the email.
Yeah, if you would. We always send out thank yous. So we'll send you a little thanks. We send you a little sticker and a little coaster.
That's sweet. Not necessary, but if you can't resist.
I can't resist. I love sending gifts out to people. It's a lot of fun. I think it's worth it.
Okay, of course.
All right. All the best. Thank you so much.
You too, man. This was very fun. Let's stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely. I'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
For more information on Java Chat, visit www.javachatpodcast.com. You've been listening to Coffee with Mike on Java Chat. Tune in weekly to this podcast for the next episode. You can also download or subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. A production of Oasis Media Group, LLC. Located in Las Vegas, Nevada. Copyright 2019. All rights reserved.